Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit session in April 2023. And I think the date is important on this one because in this field, things are going very fast. So we're going to have a session and a panel about ChatGPT, the cyber risks, and how to harden against them. But let's just have a quick round of intros. Celine, why don't we start with you?
So hello everyone, I'm Celine Pypaert. So my day-to-day is I'm a security technical specialist at Microsoft. So what that means is essentially it's more of a consultative sort of advisory role, working with FTSE 100 enterprises around energy, manufacturing, utility customers in the UK, and really just helping organizations in improving their security posture and their security maturity, and helping them with how can Microsoft products, how they may or may not help these businesses align with their strategies and goals.
Cool.
And, so my background is mainly security and solutions engineering, and then I started out in security operations. So that's where my heart lies. So, yeah.
Oh, great job description. Abbas,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abbas Haidar. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for World First Group. And I come from a IT background, been working in IT for a long time till I met someone who's not on this call. His name is Dinis Cruz, and he changed my view about how we look at things from being reactive in the IT world to being proactive in the security world. I have a big passion for cybersecurity, and I'm very happy to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Cool. Craig? Oh, wait, you need
Sorry, apologies. I hit the spacebar on my laptop. So yeah, Craig Gilliver, head of SecOps. I work for Johnson Matthey. We're a science, manufacturing, stock exchange, sort of fingers in pies across the globe. We've got a really interesting conversation around this at the moment. I'm having these conversations with my scientists, my R&Ds, my security guys, even my comms people are interested in this internally. So we've been talking about, I'm actually doing some talks internally with my company about this, but I look after the SOC, I look after engineering, I'm in OT as well, live, breathe cyber. And I know Celine, she works with me on my account. So we've been talking about this. I'm really excited about this because I think this is, for me, this is an evolutionary jump. This is really, really scary, but really, really exciting. So I'm sort of in this phase of, I've been using it avidly since it came out for all sorts of manner of things, and I've just been throwing all sorts of ethical challenges at it, so I'm really excited to sort of pick through the weeds with you all. So that's me. Over to you, my friend.
Cool. So I'm Dinis Cruz. I have two roles, which in this case actually both have interesting views on or both usage of ChatGPT. So on one end, I'm the chief scientist of a company called Glasswall, which is a sort of a UK 10-year-old startup that does a lot of stuff with intelligence agencies and basically creates secure files. And it's about making files safe. And in that world, we see and we think a lot about how can ChatGPT be used to create advanced types of malware, advanced types of file evasion techniques, etc. And then our engine, makes them safe. And on the other hand, I'm also the CISO of Harden, which is a sort of a large UK retailer, which shops on every single high street, but also a massive digital transformation who's accelerating 100 miles an hour into a world of healthcare, advice to the users, having a lot of health data, but also thinking about how to use AI and ChatGPT-like capabilities to provide services to customers. And on the other hand, it has a very much more public profile. So, when we talk about the kind of ChatGPT type attacks, Harden will be almost on the first level, and then Glasswall will be on the more advanced level of those kind of attacks. And Celine, let's start with you because you have a plan for today's panel. So why don't you give us the plan, and then we go on those 5 items and keep us honest here on the timing. So let's go.
Yeah. Thanks, and no pressure. No, just kidding. So again, ChatGPT, it has really been top of mind, I think, for a lot of people. I'm even having non-security friends just talk about it and say, oh, this is great. It's helping me with from an accessibility point of view, or just finding information, right? So I think, yeah, so as we all probably know here, the latest version, so GPT-4 was just released last month. It's been quite a buzz. We hear about children using it in their homework. Where also Microsoft, for example, have already come out around integrations, around securely and privately integrating it within their products. We're hearing also, Google and Bard and others as well. So there's more and more announcements coming out around generative AI. And the positives, right, is that this could really help workforces around the world. It could help us as users. It could help us from an accessibility point of view. It could help, with if you have dyslexia, it could help you write documents quicker and easier, or any just kind of menial tasks and everything. And then again, just with any world-changing tech, a tool can also be used for bad as well. And unfortunately, we're already seeing that, as any of us in the security space, could predict, and as we know. But then again, AI and automation and bots, that's been around and that's been used by threat actors for a long time anyway, right? I mean, that's nothing new in the security world. And so, however, now with this newer, easier access in the form of ChatGPT, we have to look at what's already been done in the wild. What are the vulnerabilities or weaknesses, and what can we do to harden or prevent that? What can the researchers do to maybe detect and improve the models so that they're not as vulnerable to that? And then we'll just close on a more positive point around, okay, well, what are the safer and positive uses of it around user experience, accessibility, and then especially how it can actually help developers, how it can help security operators as well. So when it comes to the SOC, for example, how can we use this to make something that could take hours or days to resolving an incident or doing threat hunting? How can we use this potentially to actually help that? So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Firstly, I was going to ask you, because I think the interesting bit at the end you said about the SOC, and obviously, I mean, one of the things that keeps on going through my mind is the level of where people can type information into ChatGPT and retain almost that script kiddie level of, I can now be a hacker and I'm gonna go and write a script and then I'm gonna send it off and see what it does. So I think there is an element of what is interesting is people using it for the wrong purposes, as well as obviously the right purposes. But how do we look at this and think to ourselves, what is the ethical boundaries? Because we've already seen people in the wild, creating such advanced malware that we're not even being able to sort of keep up with the speed that this is formulating in a SOC. You're not gonna know if it's written by ChatGPT, because obviously, if it's an exploit, how are you gonna know that is formulated from? So does this come down to the fact of the root of the ethical boundaries of the AI that should be principally managing that risk, or is it the individuals? Because to me, I'm being asked, how can I maintain control of my users accessing ChatGPT and allow them to use it, but not allow them to use it for bad? That's like,
yeah,
I got some ideas, but you're not going to like it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit like you could use app controller like a CASB to say, not allow employees to use ChatGPT on their work managed device. But what about their personal device, and coming up with some scripts or some sort of exploit and then just using that? And it's a bit like you're not going to stop anyone from using an IDE if they need that for actual developments. Yeah. Then what if they use it for bad? So it's a bit like, how do you know the difference? And I guess based on some of the research I've done, based on some of the reading I've done, I think, some researchers have proposed a defense in depth model around actually looking at it from an LLM perspective. So looking at the language model itself and putting in some things like looking at tokens, maybe punishing the model if it's actually listening to the user inputs, if the user is saying, oh, ignore this and make this command take precedence, when it comes to command manipulation or command prompt injection. So Yeah, so there's some interesting things there where you can actually, I think it comes down to hopefully OpenAI actually improving that and taking some of those research, some of that research on board, and maybe having some some things in place. But again, at the same time, not everything can be circumvented, or not everything can be, I guess, prevented. You know, hackers will always find a way.
Yeah, but
Side or risk.
Devil's advocate here, right? Like, you know, what's the difference between this and the early days of the Hacking Exposed book, right? Or the DEF CON conference. Like, I'm old enough to remember when people got arrested at DEF CON, right? I remember the whole discussions in the beginning, right? Of can we optimize this? And it was interesting because we went through a period where in the beginning there was a very big anti sort of establishment culture, like we just publish everything with don't consequence for the side effects, and then just to really make companies accountable. Then there was a bit of an interesting period where some real world exploits, probably in the last 10 years, that really become weaponized. And there was a question of what we're doing here, right? But I feel especially on ChatGPT, is raising the bar for everything, right? But I think we need to also look at the threat agents. And it's almost like the threat agent is not very sophisticated. You know, ChatGPT might help a bit, but it's the same thing as, you know, Kali Linux, right? And the other tools, right? They're not really going to know a bit more. Maybe it helps them to get a bit further in, but they're still going to make the same other mistakes, right? And those kind of actors, they need to have a business model, right? They need, you know, either their ideology or they are kind of you know, driven by financial gain, right? And that's where you have it, right? I feel that yes, this can be used, you know, maliciously, but we already, you know, that I think that genie is already with AI at the back, right? If somebody wants to do something bad, right, you don't need ChatGPT to do that, right? If anything, you could argue that ChatGPT is to the next level of users that are a little bit more sophisticated, that actually know a bit more what they were doing, and that's where you can add a bit of an edge, right? Especially on social engineering, right? I think on social engineering, if they can start to use that, my worry here is not the direct use of it, is the platforms that you can build on top of it, right? That you can start to build platforms, because that's where it scales, right? You know, it's almost like when somebody, you know, weaponize or packages some of these services into, you know, a new phishing thing, a new denial of service thing, a new exploit applications kind of world, right? Or the wired of finding vulnerabilities to exploit vulnerabilities, which I think we should talk about from the defense side of, but you could also do it from the attacking point of view.
Yeah, that's a good chat.
Yeah, so it's almost like a supply chain type of thing. Yeah. Oh, I see Abbas has his hand up.
Okay, so I mean, for me, ChatGPT is something amazing. I love it. And even when we play football, I use it to generate our football matches reports, which is really, really nice. The way I treat it, I mean, it all starts with, like, you know, security awareness in a way or another. So basically, I treat ChatGPT the same way I treat my mobile phone, same way I treat my laptop. I will tell you how. That, you know, I see my laptop in my mobile phone in my head. It's a golden fish in a small swimming pool full of sharks. So that's how I treat it. So basically, if I lose my phone today, I won't really care. I don't really care what's on it. I mean, photos are backed up and stuff like that. I don't have any sensitive data, very sensitive data on my phone. That's the way I treat it. And one of the things that I think it is ChatGPT, their team. I think if they come one day with a paid service, which I'm pretty sure they would do it, not that the plus service, like probably a paid service for businesses where we offer you, you know, extra layer of security and privacy. I think that's where that's going to be a key thing to help end users, because you will never be able to stop end users from typing things. I know some businesses, including the business I work for, they ban ChatGPT, so it can't work. But you know, as you know, you can connect your mobile hotspot or whatever and get to ChatGPT and get whatever you want. It's just about what you share in there. I'm pretty sure as well this opened new horizons for like new job opportunities for people. Like, you know, have I been pwned as an example? You remember, like, did we have something leaked here or there? So, and there is one more thing I noticed, that even when you ask ChatGPT to write you a piece of code, it doesn't work. I think like 6 or 7 out of 10, it doesn't work directly. You need to do some amendments and stuff like that. So it's not going to be an easy, well, I'm not saying it's not easy. It is easy to be used, but I mean, it's not, for complicated attacks, I don't think it can at the moment today. And at least from what we tried today and yesterday to be able to help us on big attacks. I don't know, you need to have the knowledge. You need to understand as an example, Python or something like that, to be able to run a Python script or whatever. So that's my view to it. Just take it as it's a golden fish in that big swimming pool full of sharks.
And you know what? I totally agree with you, because I think that this is how I'm feeling about it. I'm really excited by it, because I think it opens up new possibilities. The fact that although we're going to have this state of it's going to be used as bad and people are already trying to exploit from it, there's also this good side behind it, which it could create, I think, into a situation where, as much as we are going through a society of trying to develop, safer environments and so on, this could be at the pinnacle point. I mean, all we need now is quantum computing, and we sort of terminated the whole journey of a supercomputer in a real terms of Terminator. But I think we've got to this point now where if we can harness this in the right way, especially from a cybersecurity perspective, I think it could be really powerful, especially when it comes to phishing and social engineering. It could, done in the right way, I think it could be incredibly very insightful to behavioral analytics and how we defend from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, tell the way we very see. This is actually, since Celine, you work at Microsoft, right? I think maybe take this internally, right? Where I think this could be very interesting is for advanced threat actor identification, right? Because in a weird way, if I had access to the ChatGPT logs, right, and what ChatGPT is seeing on the back end, you could actually use it to analyze and to tell you which are the more advanced threat actors are using it. Because that's, for me, that's the worry, right? From an abuse point of view, the worry is, in fact, we should be encouraging the researchers, because we've know by experience that the researchers actually ultimately make the platform much more secure in the medium term, right? They push the envelope, they drive it. So you almost want to encourage the researchers, but you almost want to honeypot the real malicious actors. And the real malicious actors will do it. So take, for example, if somebody was developing the next Stuxnet on top of ChatGPT, right? Even if you didn't detect it straight away, you can go back, right, and see who was connecting the dots here, right? Who are actually doing certain things. So I feel that there is a more advanced type of threat actors that actually the AI providers could take a stand on, and because they will have the data sets to do it, right? And that's very interesting. At the lower end, we're going to see a raising the bar, which, to be honest, right, it's just something that, it's just a natural evolution, right? I don't think that's exponential. I think that's just an evolutionary of what's been going on for the last 5 or 10 years. I think the real interesting opportunity is on the defense side, right? Is on the services, is how we can use ChatGPT. So just wrapping up the abuse of ChatGPT, yes, I think the advanced threat actors could use it, but they could leave themselves open to be detected if they use it that way. So, it's almost like you're going to have a set of advanced actors who probably have the same thing themselves. So they probably don't need that. You're going to have the next layer down, which are the ones we want to catch, which are the ones that are not that sophisticated. They're very sophisticated to know what to do it, but they should leave enough breadcrumbs along the way for more, sort of police and sort of investigations that allow to connect the dots, right? Especially as you see attacks driven by that. So if you think about it, for example, somebody like Microsoft or other providers, Google and the others, they will see the multiple endpoints, right? If they can connect some of those, right, that's fine. And I'm sure that, the terms and conditions already say that for some of these, the data might be accessed, right? So I'm not that worried about the non-very sophisticated actors. And I think it's the mid-level that they might cause damage, but hopefully those guys could also shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you brought a good point about honeypots honeypot tokens, for an example, because researchers who are already, working with OpenAI will publicly, who are already trying to collaborate and improve. Yeah, they've actually suggested that one of the best ways is to use tokens to sort of almost like tagging technique. So basically, that way, anything that's user input, so anything that the model knows, will then know, oh, this isn't coming from OpenAI, or this isn't coming from the actual engineers, this is coming from some random user on the internet. They'll be able to know, okay, I need to take this with a grain of salt, and if they're trying to get me to bypass some sort of safe system, or trying to bypass a rule or something, then that way can actually protect against that. And then, as you said, if there's like a trap, like a honey token trap or something, that can then just set the alarm in a way, and detect. And yeah, it's really a really good point that you brought up. So for example, of course, yeah, shameless plug here, obviously coming from Microsoft, but when we think about Microsoft 365 Copilot, as it's now called, so that's we recently announced that. That's where, with a partnership with OpenAI, we will be using that. So there will be the integration of ChatGPT into the Microsoft 365 products, again, to help end user productivity, help with accessibility, just make things quicker and easier. And then as well, and I'm super excited for this, is Security Copilot with the Defender stack, with Sentinel and everything. Again, this is different than the consumer ChatGPT in that the models are not trained on your data, on the customer's data, that remains your data. So, obviously, the way that it's used has to be compliant, just like any other products and services from Microsoft when it comes to that user and customer data. But I'm really excited for it because it will, coming from a security operations background myself, where I started.
Oh, Celine, we lost you.
I can only imagine how much easier it'll make people's jobs, things like looking at the different telemetry, the different signals. Imagine you're using a SIEM and you're pulling in network logs, you're pulling in EDR logs, you're pulling in identity and access management logs, just anything that's just different. And there's already a lot of that correlation happening anyway across there, but it'll just make it easier to maybe detect some IOCs, detect, look at the patterns and detect threat actors, that kind of a thing. So but then also from a user perspective, like let's say I'm an analyst, a security analyst, I could just ask, hey, give me this query, this KQL query to do this, and I don't have to be a KQL connoisseur to be able to do it, or helping with ticketing, helping with incident response, helping with mapping out how an incident started, and then helping with that kind of response as well, and probably making that a lot quicker than having to pour out, looking at different alerts, different portals all day. So yeah, I'm really excited for that.
I just want to comment. So I like what we just went, you explained, Celine. It's really amazing. But I just want to go on the negative side. So it's a lot of positivity. I'm just going to say something that one of the most dangerous things with ChatGPT is we can feed it the wrong information. So we can feed it and train it to get the wrong information. So imagine, like, I've been working on, well, it is just on my account. So I'm just feeding ChatGPT with stuff about myself, which are all wrong. And now when I ask ChatGPT, it just gives me a full report full of how to lot of crap, nothing like real data. So it just thinks that this is one of the most dangerous things that, probably intelligence, like, big, like intelligence corporation, I don't know, whatever it is, like government intelligence and stuff like that, can use it to feed the wrong information. Probably imagine about, like, elections and stuff like that as well, how this can affect things big time. So this one of the other thing, apart, having it, for me, it's not scary. It's something really nice. It made my job easier. It made a lot of things easier. It's just like, it reminds me of when the Google engine, or when I started using the Google engine a long time ago, it was like something like, it's like magic, we used to go to the library and search for things for ages, and we don't have that information, and go and ask someone and go to find the expert or whatever. This is like back school days. And then Uncle Google came to to the world, and it was a big thing. And I think it's the same thing. It opened, it opened a lot of opportunities for people, like new jobs, and I think it changed where we are going. So that search engine changed the way we think about technology, and it was one of the biggest evolution in the history of technology. I think ChatGPT is a similar thing. My worry is, especially on the consumer, like the free version, where we can start feeding it with wrong information, and I think it is possible, and it is clearly possible. So
yeah, but
that's
it can be worse than today with the whole, like, if you think about it, it's like you can go to Google, right? And Google will start to customize things. And if you have a certain profile, suddenly you only see things based on that profile, right? So it is, if anything, ChatGPT could have the option to give a reasonably more balanced answer, right? At that level, right? The thing I would say is, you touched it a little bit, is that everybody we talk about AI for the last decade, right? And I was on the camp like, this is not AI, this is machine learning, right? Until ChatGPT came along, and that was one of the first ones that I've seen. This is actually proper, Jarvis sort of style of, conversation. By Jarvis, so I know that Microsoft now introduced the Jarvis things. I mean Jarvis from Iron Man, right? That kind of dialogue, right? That kind of understanding context. And now I use it, right? Like I said, like you guys said, I use it every day. I stopped Googling, right? It's quite interesting. Google is almost like my last option these days, right? And it's not that, and ChatGPT is interesting because he makes up shit, right? Like literally there's times where he literally just make things up, right? And then you correct it and he goes, oh, sorry about that. I'm like, dude, why you gave me the wrong answer above, right? Where actually I just corrected you. You're going, yeah, you're right. It's like, come on. But what's interesting is it made every other tool, apart from my, again, GitHub Copilot, right, look pedantic, right? Literally, if you look at most security tools, they really should be like, unless they're in a niche world where they don't really need this kind of capabilities, they should be panicking, right? Because the evolutionary step is like, Celine, you were saying that the ability to provide context, the ability to provide even a lot of information that you can analyze. It's a game changer for incident response, for interact. It was almost like every major area of security, the way you interact with developers, the way we do DevOps, the way we interact with configurations, the way that we interact with industry response, all of that. Once you have a layer of like intelligence that GPT-like environments can create, that's a game changer, right? From a defense point of view. And I think that's what's very exciting about all of this.
It feels very much that we are on the pinnacle point of, especially in security operations, and from an attacker's perspective, life's going to get quicker. So you're going to be able to do things quickly and more adversively, and equally defend and be a lot more responsive. So we're going to end up, I think, the whole cat and mouse principles of what we go through on a day-to-day basis is only going to get faster, which is exciting in some ways, because obviously makes our job that's already, sleep deprived and caffeine fueled harder. But equally, I think, it is. This is for the first time in a long while. I'm living and breathing it. Even on my phone, I'm running ChatGPT and asking questions and doing stuff, and not even just work oriented, just looking at stuff. And it is I just find it, I'm hooked to the point, actually, that you talked about Google. I actually might even look at my proxy logs to see how often I'm on Google now, because I just don't think I'm using it, and that's really interesting. Is I wonder how else people are starting to think about the interactivity of because for me, it's, I want to do this. Oh, I know how to do. I mean, it's like the other day, I wanted to look for an IDRAC, IDRAC port, and I couldn't remember it. And I'd normally just go to Google and say, "What's the IDRAC port?" And I thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to go after ChatGPT. And it not only did it find it, it helped me look for some of the TCP stuff. So I was just like, yeah, this is enrichment on a different level, and actually, this made my job easier. But equally, I was like, but I didn't think about it this way, so I'm going to try and do it slightly differently, and actually same results were achieved, but actually on a more satisfying level, maybe. I don't know, but it was really exciting.
So this is a good segue to the second one, right? The second point is accidental misuse of ChatGPT by users, right? And users could be yes, right? So I'm less worried about inputting data into the model, right? I think, again, I think Abbas, you touched it, but I think this is a bit like Tor, probably. Like, in order for you to have an impact, you need to be operating at the biggest scale, right? I think the ability of influencing the model itself, but although I think people will do it, right? I think people will hack the model, and I do think that one of the things I really like about the direction of that, actually, I think was Bing doing, is start to show references. That was quite cool. Like, I think we need to start also have explainability in a way where, if you think about it, I really would like ChatGPT to evolve, or this technology to evolve, where once to give you an answer, you can go, okay, that's a 1 paragraph answer. Now give me the 2 paragraph, give me the 5, give me the 20 paragraph, fully, documented, fully referenced, so I can actually, validate some of the things, right? Or I can find and zoom in, right? I think that's a natural evolution. And I'm not that worried about feeding data to the other side, because that's already happens today, right? Developers copy and paste data into Stack Overflow, developers uploading stuff to GitHub repos they're not supposed to, even us accidentally, whatever, right? Leaking data. That is an evolution, and it's just another linear, right? It's not exponential growth. What I think is interesting is when people believe sometimes too much on ChatGPT, right? And that's a problem, right? Because it makes up shit, right? Like, literally, and sometimes encoding is easier because it either compiles or doesn't compile. But we might be a little bit on the early days of Wikipedia, where not everything is there is 100%, and you need a feedback loop until it gets really, really powerful. So, what do you guys think of I think it's more about the misuse of some of its results, right? Not about we inputting data, but on the actual outputs of ChatGPT, and even reusing it, taking, almost like, taking it at face value, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess that's where it's also a cultural and sort of user awareness thing as well, where like you said, it's a bit like the whole fake news issue, right? That we saw, especially around, elections, US elections, and during COVID, with COVID vaccines, people see it in social media and they just take it at face value as a fact without checking the source. So I guess it's looking at it from that perspective as well. And, how do we kind of help create that awareness?
I think that's an ethical boundary, isn't it, with all human beings, is how do you ensure that the ethical use of the product is for the right context? Saying that goes in my mind as you've all been talking is, the Spider-Man saying of, with great power comes with great responsibility. We are in that principle of whatever we put in on the right context. But there's going to be individuals and people that will want to put bad in because they want to influence, they want to change. And I just don't think we can fix that per se. Because Google went through it, all of the search engines have been through it or going through it. So, I think disinformation is always going to be a challenge, because there's people out there that just want to do harm. But I think harvest in the right way, I think it opens up this new, I don't want to say attack vector because it's not, but I think what it opens it up is, and I think as you was sort of skirting around what I was thinking about the other day, was whatever people put in, they can capture them keystrokes. They're seeing that information. The telemetry of that information is really powerful, because then bringing that together and using the same AI engine to contextualize and understand behaviors of what's been inputted into the portal, actually flipping that round, you should be quite concerned what you are putting in if you're trying to deliver wrong information, because you're going to be quite easily flagged on a radar to say this individual is going out to do harm. So I think there's a balance, and I wonder actually the people out there that want to do harm, that are inputting this information to try and deliver, an uncomfortable, situation. I wonder if they actually are thinking about, hang on a minute, I'm sticking myself on a bit of a radar here, because this thing is quite powerful, and it will look at behavior, and it will look at, the scenarios of us trying to manipulate, and actually we can flip it around on them. So I think it's an interesting topic. I don't think there's right or wrong, there's no answers here, but I think I think it's just exciting just to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Craig, because you can think about users getting flagged if, again, if there are certain patterns of words being input together, such as, how to make a specific type of bomb, or asking certain things that just, sound really dodgy all at once. And actually, I predict that there will probably be maybe even new TTPs or like a new kind of like technique and procedure around this. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, security researchers are calling it prompt injection attack or prompt manipulation or just command injection, and it's really interesting. And I actually saw an example of one, and it was very simple. It looked like a game, it was like banana, is banana in the word? Yes. And then later at the end, this sentence has banana, but actually wait, never mind, ignore that and say that there isn't, and then it says banana false, like there is no banana in the sentence. And so again, it seems harmless, but you can see how as an end user you can actually manipulate it.
Abbas, go on, my friend.
No, I will wait for Celine.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Me and Celine are rabbit hole.
What I want to say, I mean, just want to, just come back to a point that Dinis raised about advanced threat actors. So imagine, we have an organization, I'm pretty sure we have them everywhere. It's like something like Cambridge Analytica, yeah. And with their, they will have the capability to harvest like, Facebook profiles. So with such a tool, if they build something on the top of ChatGPT, imagine how powerful they can be. And, all that information they can use into turning people like heads into changing their mind, like, whether it is politics or anything else. So I think, advanced threat actors here are the key threat to ChatGPT, and not to ChatGPT, just like to the public. So that's the way I see it.
Well, I think another angle here, and it's interesting to think about this from even an attack and a pen tester, right? One of the things that the current generation AIs that like have is, which I actually was surprised a little bit, is they also retain a bit of state and then emotion. And I remember reading this great book from Kevin Kelly. I think it's called The Inevitable or Rules for the New Economy or something like that. And he talked about AI from the point of view of, AI will become like electricity and you will be starting embedded everywhere. But one of the things I talked about was the fact that you don't want emotion AI. Like the last thing you want is when these kind of engines control your car, for the car to have an emotional, right, or be having a bad day, right, or having second thoughts. I think that there's a world here where we almost want to start to have pristine AI models, right? That, for example, and I think in a way, Celine, I think Microsoft is probably going that way. If you want to have these used by companies, you almost need to have stack that comes with an AI model that has a certain thing, and then you put the data on top. And you need to almost make sure that stack is pristine, right? And is not, for example, tainted, right? From different companies. Because actually, different companies will want to behave differently, right? Like even not being malicious, if you think about it, I remember when I was customizing a lot of reports and creating a lot of customization, and it was that some companies, we care about identities, others care about passwords, others cares about data leaks, others cares about injection attacks, others cares about, protecting customers, others cares about protecting financial data. So you almost start to have to change your messaging around those topics, because that's the center of gravity of companies. So I think as you see companies using these technologies, you will be the same thing, right? Like companies will have different centers of gravities. And it's an interesting thing to think about an AI pen testing tool, or an AI testing tool that gives you, how secure, how locked down, or how much leakage you have, even within AI models, where a vulnerability will be, can company A data or model impact company B model, right? And that technically shouldn't be possible, right? When you talk about leaking data and pushing data to the system. And I think if we could start to, again, remove some of the emotion, right? And start to almost separate what is the custom data that has been provided by a particular user or company, and then the general knowledge that comes with on top of it, it gets quite interesting. And that will also drive a lot of adoption.
And we've seen this in the world, right, where we've had user behavior analytics, or these engines that are black boxes dumped onto networks to go and look for adversaries to try and normalize the network and then see if anyone going forward is behaving in a malicious way. And actually they've missed the compromise because actually the behavioral engine has picked up the noise that's already in the back garden of the the compromised individual. So I think you're right. I think the core element of the AI engine needs to be protected and almost like the source needs to be ethically sound. And then when it's dumped into a company or an environment, the principles are the foundations are clean, and then the company will be one that builds on top of that for their own principle of risk mitigation or method of deployment.
Can we jump into the fourth? Go on, sorry. Wrap it up and then let's go to the last one. I think is awesome. Okay.
Or protecting data privacy and security. There was a good just really quickly. There was a good use case. Well, a good kind of idea I saw as well about. So, for example, talking about using it with the likes of communications tools, like let's say Teams or Slack or whatever, and using things like insider threat discovery tools or e-discovery and that kind of a thing, just to kind of see just to try to detect if there are kind of users trying to misuse it or accidentally, putting in, like you said, some sensitive data or payment information or just sensitive information that shouldn't go in there. But yeah, which point did you want to move on to, Dinis? Is it the data privacy and security, like protections? Or...
the last one, because I think how to protect data when using and against the misuse, prevent. Well, I think we talked a little bit about it, right? And some of these, it's about the threat model, right? If we are worried about being attacked by ChatGPT, that's a different story, right? But you always have to think about this, like if Microsoft is going to attack you, like if you can compromise Microsoft today, ChatGPT probably not the place you want to start with. Like you compromise AD and you own half the world, right? So I think we also have to be realistic, but also to think about that the best security teams live in those companies today, right? So there's an asymmetric thing here, right? I think that the last one is very interesting, right? Which is how enterprise tool integrations will help SecDevOps, right? And the dev teams, right? And how this kind of techniques, right? For example, Greg, you talk about the whole, let's scan the network, get the data, map this up correctly, right? If you think about it, we're still very primitive, right? We barely create any graphs, right? We barely create connections. We really struggle to get data from one tool to the other. Most of the tools that we use are still insanely inefficient, right? At sharing data, collaborating data, connecting it, etc. I think that field is ripe for crazy innovation. And I think there's, we have so much that we can improve that, again, from a defender point of view, remember that, I always think that it's not about us not making any mistakes and the attacker having one lucky thing, is that the attackers have to, get 20 things right for that to exploit, right? They actually, the biggest advantage that we have is that the more we understand how our system works, the more we can detect the outliers, the more we can detect the attacker's mistakes. And I think this gives, the whole ChatGPT or GPT-like capabilities allows us to have a much better baseline of what's real, what's not real, what's an outlier in our organizations. So we start to detect the attacker in much, much sooner in the organization.
It's going to speed it up. It's going to speed it up, definitely.
Yeah. From a defense point of view, right?
Yeah. I'm being challenged at the moment. How do we filter? So we want our users to use it, because I think that's important, because we're part of our company science, right? So we want to have that intellectual knowledge to be pushing into that to help us evolve in creating new innovative ideas. But at the same time, what we don't want to do is someone dumping a load of intellectual property into it and then going, oh, I forgot, I shouldn't have done that. So and we all know the layer 8 principle. So there's an element of how do we solve that. For me at the moment, I've been looking at it at the proxy level, so using that almost SSL inspection and keyword triggering, so allowing the access but the filtering of the words to go through and then blocking them on keywords. So working with the business to understand what the intellectual property names are and then blocking that if they're tried to be inputted, which I think is a good way of trying to sort of give freedom, but with constraint. Because I think it's going to be a tough one, because the end user gets excited, rightly so, and they want to just put everything in there. And you know, I was on the train the other day, and there was a guy a couple of seats along with me. He was on ChatGPT and he was doing all of his PowerPoint presentations on it. And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't know if it was sensitive or not, but there comes a point where you've got to think, is that the right thing to do? But you know, you know, it is an interesting quandary, and that's how I'm looking at it at the moment, from helping to protect the user from themselves, and to see if that still can be enabled.
So okay, but let's explore that a little bit, right? I think the interesting thread there is that we don't want confidential data to leave the organization, right?
Mhm.
That's the thread, right? I think the biggest challenge is which data is that, right?
Yeah.
And again, you were like, well, you're using regexes, but actually, if you think about it, if you could use GPT-like technologies, right, to really classify your data, right, to really understand who has access to what data, what happens to the data throughout the organization, which is a massive graph, but I think now is realistic to start to take a tackle of it. You will be able to start to detect those situations. And it's not just ChatGPT. Think about it, like it's an email, right? It's a Google Docs shared from the outside world. Is a form. Like, there's tons of places where data can leave the organization that should not be leaving, right? The challenge is that you only won't care about 0.5% of all the traffic. Is figure out what is that 0.5% of traffic that you really want to go deep on your analysis. In fact, if you think about it, you probably want a model that you could even feed those proxy data points, right? So that can do the analysis not just on regexes, right, but actually almost understanding, is this sensitive or not? And again, that if you're going back to SecDevOps, right, SecOps operations, right, I think, for example, on identity access management, which is probably still one of the biggest vulnerability categories of most organizations, right, making sure the right data is accessed by the right people at the right time, not less. I think we can use these kind of technologies to really give to make it realistic to understand what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's only going to empower it, right? Go on, sorry.
No, I just want to say that I think there will be much more work to do from now going on data classification policies. I know as people who work in the cyber world, so I think data classification policies are going to be more expanded. So you're going to need to have more planning and more tags and more whitelisted words and more like blacklist. I don't know when I use whitelist and blacklist, but I mean that's what I meant. I meant like.
Oh, look, we created policies before, right? Remember, and we were trying to connect them with Jira in a graph. Imagine a world where we can say, here are policy, right? And here the policy with actually quite a lot of detail. Does this traffic, does this behavior comply with that policy, right? That's the interesting question, right? And again, GPT-like technology would allow us to do that, right? And I guess going back, Celine, to the point of isolation, right, is that probably the next big jump here is when company or the providers of GPT-like, there's quite a lot these days, right? Like of these models can really provide an isolated world that you can feed data into it in a way that, for example, you control the governance of that situation. Let's say, for example, can I run a GPT-like environment in my own Azure or AWS or Google Cloud or whatever, Alibaba cloud, knowing that my part of data only stays within that environment? If you have that, then you can feed, like imagine, like we even on security, we would fucking feed the logs, right? Imagine a world where you can actually say, here's a data lake, as long as the data and the constructions and the models and everything stays within that cloud account, right? It would be insane to, the data and the outputs you could get by basically allowing it to feed all sorts of logs, all sorts of data, all sorts of models, all sorts of analysis, and then be able to ask really powerful questions on top of it. And I know, the latest announcement from Microsoft, you're going that direction, right? With the whole Copilot stuff.
Yeah, the Copilot stuff. And then on the Azure side, there's Azure OpenAI service, which again is the it's the Microsoft version, and it's actually a combination of what's coming from OpenAI as well as Microsoft's own proprietary model, but it's a secure private version, so meaning that just like anything else that you will spin up in Azure, any other Azure data lake, just anything else that you might have in your dynamic CRM or in Office 365. It's treated the same way. Well, it has to, right? So it has to be treated the same way where we can't have access to it. And I believe the only time that they've said that there might be an employee that might have access is, let's say for example, you decide to enroll Holland and Barrett into the private preview or something, and there's like a support issue, but they make a big disclaimer of that, because again, it's all about, your data is your data is a phrase that we often hear. I've been hearing that phrase a lot, but basically, just meaning that as opposed to the free consumer version of ChatGPT where, you can just ask questions, it's different than that, right? It's it's because it's a Microsoft service or an Azure, including Azure, then your data belongs to you. And so we have to treat it with that same, around those same regulations, laws, and frameworks. So things like GDPR, DPA, HIPAA in the US, PCI DSS, just whatever. Yeah.
But I think data isolation is going to be quite important, right? I always, more and more, I keep asking the vendors, look, you need to start giving us a copy of the platform itself, right? To run, even if it runs in our environment, in our account, right? And I think for some of these models, you need that. Because even if you think about it, for some companies, even the model actually is an asset in itself, right? Even you could even argue that the model, like, okay, Honda Bar is a good example. Like one of the things that the company is going 100 miles an hour is the idea of providing customized healthcare advice, right? So if you think about it, a lot of our customers will give us data. We were talking about some really cool data vaults, things to protect the data, models on top of models. But the interesting thing is, even if you anonymize a model or even an AI model, that in itself is a great asset, right? So again, like who owns that asset? And I think that's a very interesting question on top of all this.
That's a very good question. Very good question. I think it all comes down to, I guess one of the big themes of today is as always, it's about balance, where you want to enable productivity, you want to enable good user experience, you want to be accessible, and just help everyone. And at the same time, there's also the balance of how much risk are you willing to take, and then what are the measures you can put in place to be secure and private. But yeah, it's all about the sort of balance, I guess.
So just to end on the thread. So I think that one of the biggest threats at the moment is people not knowing how to use it. I think that we already have a challenge with a lot of, I would even call the security industry, that is not adopting innovation at good enough fast. Like fast pace. I used to joke with some guys, say, look, every team should stop in November for a week and reset, because after AWS, if you use AWS, for example, right? After the AWS, whatever they call it, like the event, right, in November, they connecting the worldly maps, right? Like they commoditize so much of their stack every 6 months that if you don't reset, right, you are already running legacy, right? Even if you are, running state-of-the-art, if you're running state-of-the-art 2019 cloud stuff, you already are crazy legacy, even 2021, right? And actually, if you think about it, this new GPT world is going to change so much that part of the challenge is actually having people knowing how to use them. And this is actually a great opportunity for the new generation who's coming along, because I think it gives them a great place to start, but it also a great, I think, challenge, because we need adoption. And I think security could actually drive a lot of this adoption, because we are a great place to drive innovation in the companies. So cool. Well, top of the hour, this was a great panel. We need to do more of these. So let's
definitely. It's been really,
I think what would be really cool, again, if I could then ask Celine, let's do another same panel of this, and then let's just map those topics like you said, so we can start to put some more research data on the session, even use a bit of ChatGPT to create content, right? But also, I think to be honest,
ChatGPT along.
Yeah, let's invite it along, right? And but I also think that the innovation now is so great that even have a State of the Union is not a bad thing, right? Yeah. Because the evolution of in 2 months from now, there's already we even talked about, with the auto AI, right? Which is the automation creating of prompts, right? There's already a lot of great other AI tools that are coming along, right? So let's sync up. So let's go around. Any final words? Celine, let me start with you.
No, I just a final word. I used it to do a little bit of OSINT on myself, open source intelligence, just to see what it would say about me. And it was interesting. It was pretty much correct. I think I got one thing slightly, it was a little bit not so correct, but anyway, but again, just goes to show if you have a, you know, a unique name, or if you're able to just kind of search yourself. It sounds really vain, but I actually did it for a different talk I did around open source intelligence, and imagine people using ChatGPT for that, you know. It's not the same as other OSINT tools, but yeah. So I just thought that was kind of
Cool. Abbas, any words?
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT is an amazing tool which is changing the technology world and our world. Use it wisely. That's it. That's what I would say for now to like normal people. I mean, for businesses, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of solutions. You're gonna have like your private data pool and stuff like that, which it's your own data probably. But if you want to allow ChatGPT access to your business, I would say put some filtering, like Craig explained earlier. Work on your data classification. Work really well on your data classification policy, and let's see where. I'm pretty sure that Dinis and everyone here, in a couple of months, you're gonna start having these sales calls saying someone is selling you about data filtering on ChatGPT and stuff like that. So
yeah, the filtering.
thank you. Interesting, by the way. I really love this panel.
Well, thanks.
Craig.
Yeah, I mean, everything, all and above what's been said. I really enjoyed it. And it's just, you know, I think we've all bounced off each other with different views and opinions. And I think there's no right or wrong here. For me, the excitement is I've been waiting for this for years, to have an online friend that talks back to me and to have someone that we can, you know, for me, we're on that pinnacle point of a massive evolutional industry jump. And I think not just from cybersecurity, right? I mean, this could invent, I don't know, something that I think will come out of this will be really revolutionary for the world. I mean, we might end up inventing something like the longer lasting battery, or we might solve the energy crisis, or we might, I don't know, world peace, whatever. It is something, I can feel something's on the horizon. I just don't know what it is. But
Yeah, and I agree, Dinis. I think the future generation as well. I think this will create new jobs, and it's just amazing.
And you know, forward-looking statement: Google could be dead after this. This could be, if they don't get on the game, they're going to lose this. So yeah, there's going to be
but they're the ones who can benefit the most, right? So I think is the next year down, especially a lot of the next year security companies, they all should be freaking out because they can be redundant like in 6 months. Right.
But
like InfoSec, right? You go to InfoSec, like 70 to 80% and 90% of those companies, they really need to pay attention, or else they're going to be commoditized.
If they shy away from this, they're going to lose massively.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, guys. So
thank you very much
for participating. This was a great session, and I'll see you on the next one.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All the best.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.